Hi guys. Today I was not able to be on the classroom with you because of some personal issues. And today I'm going to give you these two topics online. So catch up with me and let's start. First of all, I'm going to give you the topic of the relationship of the United States and Latin America between the years of 1910 and 1920. And as we already know, Latin America during those years was politically unstable. In the political aspect, it was not that great. And also in the economic aspect, it was depending of exploring raw materials. That was the main resource of the Latin America, giving raw materials. And let's start. First of all, some historical context, as we already know, and as I already mentioned, during those years, the United States increased the military and economic influence in this region because of the things that were happening in those years. As we already know, the First World War happened during these years in 1914 until 1918. So this was a main topic, the military aspect. And then, as we already know, the main economic aspect between Latin America and the United States was the export of raw resources or raw materials. As we already know, many Latin American countries depending on exporting coffee, sugar, banana, oil, and minerals, as we already know. And the world was very unequal, as we actually know, because that is an issue that it still happens as right now. And the United States actually wanted access to natural resources, new markets for its products, and aspects in control of trade routes. Also, the United States sold manufactured products. Latin America gave the raw materials, so the United States has the availability of manufacturing those products. And these are some kind of highlights of things that happened through these years. As you already know, between 1914 and 1918, World War I happened, and I already explained this topic. But through these years, the USA exported many materials to Latin America, and then the USA occupied the Dominican Republic in 1916, and it reorganized the finances, and it was kind of a big topic in that year, of course, for Dominican Republic, because the creditors and business interests were demanded, and also that was a main topic through those years. Then, well, before that, on 1914, the creation of Veracruz, where it interrupted trade. As you already know, Veracruz also had helped the United States in trade and also to export some materials, and that increased the tension between Mexico and the United States, of course. Then we have the Mexican Revolution, as you already know, and there was a big, well, one of the most important events that affected economic relations between the United States and Mexico, of course, and also the political instability worried American investors. As we already know, the USA was very critical in through those years, and some businesses lost a lot of money and also property because of that. And the US government closely watched those events to protect the interest, of course. And also during the revolution, we really could saw how connected the economic interests were and how the impact was in those years. And then by 1920, the USA companies had major investments, and of course, Latin America, mainly on oil sugar, coffee, the bananas, which was a big market through that time, and copper. Also, the United States invested on railroads and mines, plantations, and oil fields because, as we already know, Latin America is the main export of oil through the United States and also many countries, and also control many industries, as I already mentioned. And because of that, it also sold many manufactured goods to the region, and it became some of a export and relationship. And yeah, also transport was one of the main relationships between the United States and Latin America. And also banks and companies expanded through those years, and the United States became the main economic power. And in conclusion, as I previously mentioned, between 1910 and 1920, the relationship between the Latin America and United States was based on intervention and economic expansion, of course. And while the US brought investment and development, it also created dependence and political tension, sorry, because of the power that Latin America had through those years as well. And then I'm going to explain the same topic, but this is more most specifically on 1920 and 1930. And in those years, uh, some relevant thing happens. And one of those was the cinematic aspect in Latin America. As we already know, Hollywood existed through all of those years. But in 1920, 1930 is when it came to Latin America. So we had a first glance of what was the cinematic aspect through those years. Well, during this decade, the relations became less military, of course, because World War I happened in the previous decade. So in these years, the relationship was mostly economic. The United States, of course, uh, was not one of the well was one of the most powerful countries after World War I, of course, because as we previously mentioned, it became one of the most the first manufacturer of those years. And during this decade, of course, the impact of World War I really the thing that impacted Latin America and the United States, of course. And during the 1920s, the US companies invested heavily on many things on Latin America and also in Mexico. In Mexico, we had the oil, which was the main invest of the United States in Latin America. But first of all, in 1921, the US trade with Latin America increased strongly after the post-war recession, of course. And in 1924 and 1928, the US privated the investment in Latin America, which grew rapidly. And by 1929, the US was the principal foreign investor in many countries, sorry. And as we previously mentioned, American companies invested sectors such as oil in Mexico, as also in Venezuela, and copper in Chile, sugar in Cuba, and bananas in Central America, which, as I previously mentioned, was one of the main trades through those years. By 1924, the US troops left the Dominican Republic, and after the occupation, as I previously mentioned on the previous topic, and some of the US troops left Nicaragua, but conflict returned later, and that was on 1925. Uh, Through those years, as you already know, there was some political conflicts, but they managed those through the years. And by 1926 and 1927, the civil conflict in Nicaragua led to renewed U.S. intervention. As you already know, uh, the U.S. wanted to occupy as many. a place or country as they could. So that was the main reason of this. And by 1928, Herbert Hoover visited Latin America and promising better relations. Uh, that was kind of a lie because then we had some conflicts in the economic aspect that I'm going to be talking, but that's in the next. It's As I mentioned, the cultural influence of the United States during the 1920s was mostly on Hollywood movies. So jazz music became more popular in those cities, and consumer products and advertising. That was a main aspect that highlighted at that decade as well. Sorry if I talk a little strange. I'm not that good, but I'm going to keep this topic. Well, as I previously mentioned, the previous sentence or topic that we previously talked about, uh, we have the Great Depression, which led to a lot of troubles. But the Great Recession happened because the Wall Street crash on October of 1929. Uh, in 1928, everyone told us that everything was going to be okay, but as we are saying right now, and as we saw, because first we are in 2026, uh, sorry, the Great Depression happened on 1929, and with that, it reduced trade between the United States and Latin America, of course, and also it created a lot of price drops and unemployment, of course, because of poverty. And because of that, countries like Brazil, Chile, and Cuba were heavily affected. And then we have the consequences of this. Of course, as you already mentioned, as I already mentioned, the unemployment and lower prices was the main consequence of this. And also, coffee came from Brazil, sugar from Cuba, and copper from Chile. And all of those aspects were affected because of this. Also, the trade of the oil from Mexico and Venezuela. And then, because of these issues, the governments face instability, of course. As we already know, if we didn't have anything to trade with other countries, the economic aspect was going to be affected, of course. And with that, we're going to be a global economic issue or alert, I think, that I can say it like that. And countries began seeking economic independence, and also new policies like industrialization started. And in conclusion, between 1920 and 1930, the United States became the main economic influence in Latin America. Of course, uh, the United States was the main manufacturer. So if the other countries didn't have the availability of export all of the raw materials, of course, the United States was going to have the main power on that situation. However, the Great Depression showed the risk of dependence and pushed the countries to look for more independent economic strategies, of course. And that led to Mexico being more independent and also looking for more, of course, independency in the topic of oil, because as we already know, we are rich in that material. So because of that, Mexico and all of the countries in Latin America and starting seeing that all of the failing, and all of the economic and all the collapses that was happening at that time was because of the exports and employment, sorry. So because of that, the the countries of Latin America are starting being more alert and noticing all of these aspects because of the financial crisis. And I'm so sorry if I was not able to be on the classroom with you today. I hope that you learned something today. I don't have a video this week, but this was my last practice, and I thank you so much for being part of this journey. And I hope that in one of the classes that I gave to you, you learned something. And I hope that, uh, yep, I hope that you learned something, and I hope that you have something that you can share with others that you acquired through this class. And thank you so much again. I'm a little dizzy, so I hope that I gave you this topic correctly, and I hope that you enjoyed this class. And thank you so much, you guys. Have a good day, and I will leave you to my other classmates, Angel and Samira.